Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. So this installment of the hydraulic lift table is going to cover some work on the base of the unit. I'm going to be laying out the pivot point for the leg and the slot and cutting the slot for the leg. This is the scissor leg. This end will have a pivot point, so it'll go pivot up and down. This side's going to roll in and out as it scissors, and I'm going to lay out this bolt has to go through the frame at the same height as this pivot point. So I'm going to show you the layout for that. I'm going to show you the cutting of that, and on the next video I'll go over how I put this leg together. So let's get into it. Okay, so we're looking at the base of this unit and the legs sitting in the position they're going to be in, and what we're marking out is the pivot point. And we're trying to find the height, first of all, off of the bottom of the frame, because this leg on the left end there, that's going to be a pivot point with a bolt going all the way through, but that also has to match the height of this roller. So I'm actually going to use the roller to determine the height of my pivot point. And when I set the roller on there, if I mark right through the axle or the hole bored in the middle of that wheel, that's going to show me what the height is. The tricky part is this pencil it's a little bit undersized for the job. So I'm going to show you a little trick here. We got our friend blue painter's tape, and we're going to wrap it around this pencil. What that does is, the more wraps of tape you put on there, it increases the diameter of the pencil, essentially. You can use any kind of tape. This is just what I had around. And so I'll add enough tape, and you're probably better off adding a little bit more than you need. And I'm using a knife to cut off. You can tear it off, but sometimes it's just easier if you do a little bit neater job on this. So now you can see it just doesn't quite go in there. So instead of forcing it, I can peel a little bit back off, whatever I think it'll take. And this isn't perfectly accurate, but this is accurate enough for the slot that I'm making, because the slot will be oversized for the bolt that's going through. It'll be a 5/16 bolt, and I'll probably do a 3/8 of an inch slot. So now the pencil is centered. The tip is out a little bit. Try to make sure the tip is sharp, because the sharper the tip, the more accurate your layout is going to be. And if I put a little bit of pressure on the pencil and roll my wheel across here, that's the exact height the wheel is going to sit. And now I have a line that's the center of the axle, which will continue through the roller, through the frame, and that will prevent the scissor leg from lifting up off of the frame. I can set my combination square at that height, because it's going to be easier to lay these things out on the outside of the frame. Now I put the leg in place, and as I slide it back and forth, I've got some play. So I'm centering it so I have clearance with my roller on the one end, and I'm getting a measurement off of the inside of the 1/4 inch 90-degree angle. And since that number is off of the inside, I'm going to transfer that inside face around to the outside of the frame. Then if I put the layout on the outside, I can drill from the outside, and I can use my jigsaw on the outside. So I transfer that line. Now I find my dimension off of the back, which I think in this case was about 1 3/16 inches, but I'm not positive. And I'm going to mark that out. And that will give me my vertical center of the pivot. And now I want to double check and make sure that I haven't moved my combination square and make sure that I'm still at the right spot. Now I can lay out the height, which is my horizontal center of this pivot point. And I'll use this same process to lay out the center line for the slots on the other end of the frame. So this is the other end of the frame. And right now I have my combination square set to the line that I found with the roller previously. So this is showing the center of my axle, which is also going to be the center of my slot. And I'm marking that so that I can locate two different holes. I'm going to drill one hole at each end of the slot, and then I can cut between those with a saw. I'm going to use my spring-loaded punch here to find center of my two holes. This one got off a little bit, so you'll notice when I drill it, I had to angle my drill some because I'm not doing this in a drill press and I'm doing it freehand, so I had to angle it to sort of cheat it back into position. But sometimes you have to make do, and that's the art of building, everybody. So I'm starting these holes with a 3/16 bit initially. I'm going to go up to a 3/8, but it's easier to drill through this 1/4 inch with a smaller hole and then enlarge it. You could use a step drill for this. At some point, the material gets a little bit thick for a step drill because you're drilling one hole size at the back of the steel and a bigger hole at the top. So doing it with increasingly larger drill bits was a better way to go in this case. This is my 5/16 bit. So we're going to get this hole drilled in each end. And by having a 3/8 inch hole, when I'm all said and done, if I connect those holes, I will have a 3/8 of an inch slot, and I'll have a 5/16 bolt, and there's a difference of a 1/16 of an inch. And if you split that top and bottom, I have a 32nd of an inch of clearance in my slot above and below the bolt. It doesn't have to be touching at all times. It just needs to be there to prevent the uplift that will inevitably happen if someone tries to pick this up. It also keeps it from tilting out of position when I don't want it to, if there's a heavy load on there. Now, you can cut this slot a lot of different ways. You could laser cut it, plasma cut it. You can cut it with a torch. You can cut it with a cutoff wheel. You can use the jigsaw like I'm going to do. But I don't have most of those capabilities. The cutoff wheel works, but it's really messy and lots of bad stuff for you to breathe. So my preference on this one is to use a jigsaw. And I'm marking this with a scribe and my combination square. An alternative would be to clamp a straight edge from one hole to the other up against the edge of the hole and scribe that. That might have been easier because it's a little bit tough to scribe through this mill scale on the steel. And this is just a second combination square that I have. You could use one and set it twice. I just happen to have two. But as you're scribing this mill scale, the mill scale is a byproduct of the manufacturing process on the steel. And it's sort of a hard, flaky layer that is kind of hard to, you should clean it off and grind it off before you weld because you get better penetration that way. But it does make it hard to write on, but it will help your scribe marks show up because you're scratching through to clean metal. It might be a little hard to see in the video. Now what you can see me doing here is I'm I'm using the jigsaw blade to sort of eat away at the corner of the hole because the hole is round and I need a corner so that I can get the blade over sitting directly on the line I want to cut before I start cutting. If you start in the middle and sort of taper over to your line, that's a trick that I would use in woodworking. But with steel, when you try to come back the other direction and gradually have the blade cut into the steel, it doesn't work very well. So I prefer to take just a minute, and you actually start at a pretty aggressive angle, cutting away the edge of the hole until you make some space for that jigsaw blade to sit. So once I get that ground out enough and I can get the blade sitting in there, then I'm going to be able to make this cut. I can start it right on my line, and this cut it's a little bit slow going because of the fact that it's 1/4 inch steel. It's pretty thick, but get a metal cutting blade for your jigsaw. Get one that's designed for thick metal that'll have fewer teeth per inch, and plan on, I made both of these cuts with one blade. So expect that you're probably going to need a couple of blades to do something uh, with this much cutting. This is probably about 3 feet of cutting total by the time it's all said and done. And that's a pretty good amount through 1/4 inch steel for a jigsaw blade. But since I have my corners kind of ground out of that hole, I can get the saw started on line, and with the jigsaw, I can control my cut pretty well. So my cut ends up being a lot cleaner overall, and it'll require less grinding to clean up after the fact. Because the neater it looks, the better the finished product's going to be. And it's a little bit rough from the cut, so you can use a file, you can use rounded files for the ends. I'm going to just give it a quick once over with the grinder. We're going to take down the high spots, take down the burrs. I'm going to repeat this process on the other side, and that's going to get the slots cut in the frame. So there you have a little bit more work on the frame. And in the next video, we're going to get into how we assemble the legs, and we're going to start putting the scissor legs together and try to get on with this build. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Hope you can join us next time. Take care.